This is a Lewis machine gun. It was used in World War I to cut down enemy soldiers on the battlefield. But in 1932, the Australian government pointed this weapon at birds. Yes, birds. Today, we're looking at the unbelievable moment when a modern army went to war against thousands of emus and walked away defeated. Stick around, because the best part isn't that the army attacked the birds. It's how the birds outsmarted them at every single step. To understand how this all started, picture Australia in the early 1930s. The Great Depression had hit the country hard. Money was scarce, jobs were disappearing, and the government was desperate to help World War veterans rebuild their lives. They created a land program called the Soldier Settlement Scheme. On paper, it sounded patriotic. In reality, it meant giving struggling ex-soldiers dry, isolated farmland and telling them to grow wheat in a region that barely supported farming. These men were doing everything they could to survive. They were living on tight margins, fighting poor soil, unpredictable rain, and falling wheat prices. And then, the emus arrived. After a harsh drought inland, roughly 20,000 emus migrated toward the coast. They found the perfect oasis: fenced farmland, freshwater dams, and fields full of wheat. For the farmers, this was a nightmare. For the emus, this was a buffet. These birds weren't small. They stood nearly 6 feet tall, weighed close to 45 to 55 kilograms, and could sprint at 50 km/h without getting tired. They smashed fences, trampled crops, tore through water supplies, then invited in rabbits through the broken wires, creating a second wave of destruction. One emu mob could flatten acres of wheat in a single day. The veterans had survived machine guns in France. But now, their biggest enemy was a giant, angry, hungry bird. So they asked the government for help. And the government sent soldiers. The defense minister approved a military operation led by Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. His team brought 2 Lewis machine guns, several thousand rounds of ammunition, and one unshakable belief. This was going to be easy. After all, how hard could it be to shoot birds the size of small dinosaurs? Well, very hard, as it turns out. On November 2, 1932, scouts spotted a large mob, nearly 1,000 birds, moving toward a water source near Campion. The soldiers set up an ambush. The birds arrived, Meredith gave the signal. The soldiers opened fire and instantly learned something important. Emus don't run in straight lines. They scatter like marbles dropped on a floor. The machine gun was built to mow down lines of human soldiers, not fast-moving animals sprinting at unpredictable angles. Within seconds, the flock split into dozens of smaller groups. Some zigzagged, some bolted toward trees. Some simply outran the stream of bullets. The soldiers barely hit anything. Imagine showing up with world-class technology, and the enemy responds by simply running. That was the emu strategy, and it worked. After the failed ambush, the soldiers tried a mobile attack. They mounted a machine gun on the back of a truck and chased the emus across the plains. This was worse. The truck bounced violently over rough terrain. The gunner couldn't aim. The birds outran the truck. Dust blinded everyone. One witness said the scene looked like 2 drunk men trying to shoot ghosts. The final result of Week 1? Fired 2,500 rounds. Confirmed emus killed, maybe 50. And even that number was debated. Newspapers mocked the operation. British reporters roasted Australia for losing a war to birds. The government quietly halted the mission. After the withdrawal, the emus returned in even larger numbers and destroyed more farmland. Farmers begged for help. Oddly enough, Major Meredith himself asked for a second chance. He believed he could win if he changed tactics. So the military approved Operation Emu War, Phase 2. This time, the strategy was smarter. Instead of chasing birds across open land, the soldiers coordinated with farmers to herd the emus into ambush zones. At first, it looked promising. One operation funneled over 1,000 emus toward a dam. They opened fire, 12 birds fell. Then the machine gun jammed. The rest escaped. Even when everything lined up perfectly, the emus seemed to have nature on their side. Over the next month, the soldiers shot roughly 986 emus using nearly 10,000 rounds of ammunition. That's 10 bullets per bird, and that's only counting confirmed kills. The emu population, still around 20,000. The war was over. The emus had won. The government tried to minimize the embarrassment, but the story spread. The world couldn't believe it. A national army lost to giant birds. But Major Meredith wasn't bitter. In fact, he made the most famous comment of the entire conflict. He praised the birds like a true gentleman soldier. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. He wasn't joking. The emus were fast, coordinated, and surprisingly hard to kill. And unlike the soldiers, they didn't run out of ammunition. The real solution didn't involve guns at all. Australia eventually expanded a massive barrier system called the emu-proof fence. It protected farmlands in ways machine guns never could. Once the fencing went up, the emu raids dropped dramatically. No bullets, no trucks, no military. Just simple environmental design. The Emu War isn't just a funny headline. It says a lot about how humans think. We love simple solutions. Use guns. Use force. Push nature around. But nature doesn't always cooperate. Sometimes it outruns the truck. Sometimes it jams the gun. Sometimes it splits into 100 groups and disappears into the bush while you reload. The Emu War is a reminder that arrogance, shortcuts, and assumptions can be disastrous. And sometimes the enemy you underestimate the most wins. So let me ask you, if you were standing in that field in 1932 with a machine gun on one side and 20,000 emus on the other, who would you bet on? Tell me your pick in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, check out the next video about the time a world power tried to train bomb-carrying bats for war. You don't want to miss that one. See you in the next one.